Would it be true to say that putting on Meistersinger is a challenge for an opera company?
I think it's about as big a challenge as any opera company could face. Its scale, in terms of its demands, the sheer numbers of people involved, the scale of the production that is needed, the length of the piece, and a great performance of Meistersinger goes by in a flash, but actually it takes a good few hours,
yes.
Makes it a particularly wonderful challenge for an opera company. Even the greatest of opera companies can't do it too often, frankly, because of the demands that it makes. Yeah. It's also a piece that I think requires great maturity from every department in a company. Particularly, of course, the chorus and orchestra.
It's one of the most perfect scores, and what's so marvelous about it, it's interesting that we have Hansel and Gretel and Meistersinger in the same thing, because they're Wagner's two comic operas, if you like, if you don't count the early ones. But you know, so it is a comedy, but it has such depth, and you know, so it's much more than that. And to me, I'll never forget the first time I heard it. Mm-hmm. We came to the end of the piece. It was in Berlin, actually, at the Deutsche Oper, and I couldn't get out of my seat. I mean, I was the last person to leave the theatre. I was so spellbound by it.
It's the most epic expression in opera, these big pieces of his. And I sang the role of Eva one time, but it was in Bayreuth. Ooh. I said, I really want that T-shirt. And Wolfgang Wagner directed it, and I speak fluent German, but I could not understand him because he speaks in a very thick dialect. But I sort of got everything by osmosis. It was a wonderful cast. I thought a really lovely production. Being there, soaking up the history, Daniel Barenboim was in the pit, so it was an extraordinary reading, as you can well imagine. And then I didn't go back because I had Donna Anna right afterwards, which suddenly felt challenging, and I thought, I'm never going to be a Wagner soprano. But I remember standing on stage so clearly in the final scene and being overwhelmed by that wash of choral sound in particular, but also really worrying about the two leading men, because the stamina requirements in this piece, casting this piece is impossible.
Both the roles of Sachs and Walter are cruelly demanding.
Long and heavy and unrelenting in terms of the requirements, the physical requirements of the
Sachs, I think, is the longest bass baritone role in the entire repertoire.
I believe so.
And Walter is so cruel, not because it's all that long in terms of sheer singing, but because the most demanding comes last, the prize song.
Yeah.
Well, and your ability, I saw your ring, which absolutely was incredible. And I'm so excited to imagine what you'll bring to this great work, because Sarander, you have an ability to sort of bring a fluidity and a pacing to even the heaviest pieces that makes them stay alive. Can you talk about the cast a little bit?
Yes, I think you're right. With Wagner, structure and shape is everything, because if you get that right, then hopefully the music doesn't seem to get, you know, it seems to pass. The time seems to pass very quickly. So that's the trick. And we do have fantastic people. We have Jim Morris, who was such a great Wotan here, and is one of the great Wagnerians of this country. And then we have Johann Botha, whose Lohengrin here was an absolute miracle vocally and dramatically, I have to say, because he has such a range. He can give you the most heroic sound, and he can pare it down to something that's so intimate and lyrical. He's a very great artist.
We've done Otello together, and we recorded Strauss's Daphne, and he is amazing because I can, as a lyric soprano, I can sing a duet with him. He can bring his voice down, and it's a soft grained sound, and then suddenly it has the stentorian ring that you think, I'm really glad I'm not singing now. But he's fabulous on stage too, because his presence, I mean, he has such a huge presence, but it's also a sympathetic presence.
He draws you in to his character and his feelings. I think it's very powerful.
And we have a great Beckmesser, Bo Skofus.
Yes, we do.
Who's a wonderful singing actor, and who will bring such skill and such finesse to what is also a phenomenally difficult role.
Yes, and it can be too much of a caricature.
Yes.
I mean, I think that, you know, this the humour of this thing has to be judged very finely, I think.
And then a very distinguished Rhine Opera Center alumna, Amanda Majeski,
who is having such huge success in Dresden right now,
Yes.
and other places.
returning to lyric as Eva.
Yeah.
And Eva, is an interesting part and has its own incredible challenge. And nobody wants to sing Eva, so I'm giving you the inside story here. Because in the second act, it's all very conversational. The quintet has a demand that's similar to Non mi dire in Don Giovanni.
Yes.
It's exposed, it's high, and they're long phrases, and it's the only moment to shine. And therefore, of course, we imagine that it's 10 times harder than it is, and there's incredible pressure. So just know that beautiful, pristine quintet comes at a great cost of nerves.
And there's also one extraordinary outburst that Eva has in Act 3, which everyone waits for, who knows the score, which is also demanding.
It's really interesting in that respect. And in fact, when I've sung it, most people do tend to sing it once and then either move on to heavier repertoire, or you can be a lighter voice and that can be your heavy repertoire. It's so interesting.
It's actually about art and life in a more profound way than any other opera that I know, I think. And it's transformative.
And Wagner can have that emotional impact on you as a member of an audience, like maybe no other composer, just transfixing you to an extent that you can't speak, you can't move, you're so overwhelmed by the experience.